Welcome to another edition of Stance. Vaccine racism, that is what I'm here to talk to you about today. The world is incinerating due to COVID-19. So, we have to remember that many of the world leaders have failed their populations by not securing enough vaccines for the entire population. Nevertheless, reality stands at our face today. When the third world raised its voice in the month of January, it was suppressed yet again. The US had used its Defense Production Act to ban export of materials required for vaccine manufacturing, effectuating delay and drastic drop in vaccine production. Meanwhile, US, EU nations and Japan are blocking access to vaccines at the World Trade Organization by opposing a request filed by South Africa and India to temporarily waive intellectual property rights until there are enough vaccines for everybody. They're telling the world to stand in line again, while themselves hoarding and purchasing all available production capacities. Many countries are yet to even receive a single dose through Covaxin program. For most of the colored people of the world, the only hope are vaccines produced in India, Russia and China, though their production capacity has been crippled by the EU and US policies. The EU, alongside other rich nations, has used their position of power and wealth to hoard the vaccines and obviously take over production capacities, leaving nothing for the rest of the world, reminding all of the colonial era. Even within the European borders, many migrants and racialized minorities are facing the intersection of discrimination in terms of restricted access to vaccines because of lack of identity papers, resident status, or access to information. Asians are subjected to anti-Asian racism in Europe and driven to death by the apartheid-style vaccine colonialism. Now let's move to the next phase of this racism. India has its own vaccine for COVID-19 called Covaxin and began using it months ago. However, WHO still hasn't approved it for emergency use. It is made with the same technology as both the Chinese vaccines are, but the racism is omnipresent as WHO continues to ask for more data to give approvals to the vaccine. The United States today, which stands with India at many levels, rejected Covaxin for emergency use in the United States as well. In the meantime, the US continues to push India to take Pfizer and Moderna without the indemnification clause, waiving these companies of any responsibility in case something untoward happens, which means that tomorrow, after you take these vaccines, you may die, and these companies will not be held liable for it, even though they're charging a price for it. India first resisted, but facing massive internal criticism for mismanagement of the vaccine strategy, eventually seems to have buckled. India has gotten ready to sign the clauses and get the vaccines from wherever it can be, other than China, obviously. The Russian vaccine Sputnik V has also entered India, but it does not have WHO approval either. Both the Chinese vaccines have the approval. The question we all need to ask is, why isn't the world working cohesively to vaccinate together? Why isn't there a global strategy on which populations need to be vaccinated first? As we have seen, biological viruses see no barriers. Ironically, the world hasn't learnt even at the end of the pandemic. Global greed for making money continues at the cost of human life. Tragic it might sound, yet it is true. This is what the origin of racism always was and always will be. Thanks for watching Stance. Continue watching Democracy News Live.